Hey everybody, Mark Bates here. One of the questions I get asked a lot, particularly in the Slack channel, is how do you integrate something like Vue or React or some other front-end framework with Buffalo? And that's a great question. Now, I am not a front-end developer by any stretch of the imagination, so please bear with me in this example here. But I spent a little time and played around with Vue a little bit and got it working on a Buffalo application. So I just thought I'd walk you through that in this little video here. The source code for this is at github.com/gobuffalo/Vue recipe. The Vue stuff is not really that complicated. What the app is really going to do, it's going to talk to a Buffalo API. It's going to pull back a list of bands, show the list of bands. When you click through a band, it's going to show you the band name, the bio of the band, and the members of the band. That's it. Just a couple API endpoints. It's really more about understanding what I had to do in terms of the Webpack configuration. And what did I need to tweak on the Buffalo side to make it work? The answers is very small on the Go side, as you'll see, and very small on the Webpack side. So all I ask is that you please don't tell me how terrible my Vue code is. I'm sure it is terrible. I've never written it before in my life before this little demo here. Anyway, so I pulled down the repo here, and I ran the Buffalo setup command with the -d flag. And what the Buffalo setup command will do is it'll run yarn and dep and run the seed task, run any tests, that sort of stuff. And you can see it kind of did all that. So there's yarn and there's dep ensure. The -d flag will make sure to drop any databases that are in the database YAML. I just like that because I do a lot of development, pulling down stuff all the time, and it's just nice to kind of throw those things away sometimes. And then it creates the databases again, runs the migrations, and then runs a DB task if one exists, and finally it runs tests. There actually are no tests, unfortunately, for this app. Again, this is more of a recipe app than anything else. But anyway, we've installed everything. So if I start up the app here, it's going to take a minute simply because of the vendor directory, and it's got to compile all of that stuff here. But I thought I'd show you the end result first before we look at the code needed to make it happen, which again is actually pretty small to get that going. And so as soon as there we go, vendor has finished, and now we can go to localhost 3000. There we go. And there's our app. I can click on the Beatles and I can see their information. I can click on the monkeys and home. And this is all being rendered on the front end by Vue, but talking to a Buffalo API on the back end here. And you can see that, here's the JSON call, for example, to get the band information. And here's a JSON call to get the members for a band. So again, nothing too special. So let's look at the Webpack configuration here. To make this work, I had to install a couple plugins, but nothing too magical, actually. So let's start with the package JSON. So really, there were 4 plugins that I added here: Vue, Vue Loader, Vue Router, and Vue Template Compiler. And Vue is obviously the kind of default Vue source. Vue Loader lets us load .vue files, which I've only just found out about. Vue Router is the router for Vue, and Vue Template Compiler compiles templates for Vue. That was all I needed in terms of NPM modules, node modules, to make this sort of work. In my web config, I added a couple things. One is I added this resolve section and set up some aliases. And what these do is, you can see I've resolved Vue to point into my node modules, and I've resolved router to also point at the correct file in my node modules. And this is going to make my code in my views a little bit easier. So if we look at application.js here, you can see I can say import Vue from Vue and import Vue Router from Router. and I don't have to do kind of long, kind of, node module this and that, blah, blah, blah. I get much shorter, nicer, kind of cleaner imports there. So I did that. And the other thing I did in this Webpack config was I added another set of test rules. So if it sees .view, then it should call the .view loader. But that's it. So that was entirely all the changes I made to the Webpack config file. That's it. We're all good there. My application.js file, again, isn't that special. You can see, we still got Bootstrap and jQuery required at the top. I'm importing Vue from that Vue alias that we had in our Webpack config. I'm importing the router from that same alias in Webpack config. I'm using the Vue router. Then I'm importing a couple components in my application. And you can see if I go under assets, JS, components, I have app.view, I have band.view, so I can open up app.view here, and I got my template. And then I also have my script, my actual component. And here you can even see inside of this, I have this fetch data function, so that when this component is created, this is the homepage kind of component, it's going to call this fetch data. It's also going to do call that same function if the route changes. And inside of fetch data, it's very simple. I'm just using jQuery. Some people use, I think it's Axiom or something like that. But I just use jQuery because it's already loaded and I know it. And I'm just going to do a simple get JSON request. When it comes back, I'm going to set the bands equal to the data. And here's my bands inside this data function here. Again, I'm not going to try to explain Vue because you know what? There are a lot more people better qualified than me to explain it, because honestly, I'm still learning. I just started playing this for the first time. But again, this all works, and what's nice about, we're at the point here already where I added 4 plugins to package JSON. I added just a few things to Webpack config.js, and we're off to the races. We can load Vue, and the same kind of style of plugin, of the same kind of stuff can be used for React or Angular or whatever framework du jour is at the time that you're watching this video. There is one kind of big change, not big change, but it's kind of small change we had to make on the Go side to make all this work. If we go to actions-app.go, the only change, apart from, I added my API as a group, and then I added bands off the API, and I added members off the band, and then members, I get this use kind of load band thing, which all it does is a piece of middleware that loads the band, so I have access to it in my actions. But if we look at the routes, right, you can see, here we go, these are my routes, so I've got API bands, and then off of that I have the band members hanging off that. But the real kind of secret sauce in all of this is this one line right here. And this line is what really allows the magic to happen. So let's go back to this page here. If I click on the Beatles, you can see my URL changes to /band and then the ID of the band. Now, what I want is I want to be able to copy this URL, maybe say open Chrome, right? Paste it in Chrome, and get that same band. Seems reasonable, I think. So how do we do it? And the magic is this one line. If I comment out this one line, I'll explain it in just a second, and I go back here and I refresh, I get a 404. Can't find that path. But if I go back to localhost 3000, that works. When I click on monkeys, it works because this is all being loaded on the front end. This is all JavaScript. But if I refresh the page, band not found. So what's happening here is what I'm saying is, if it fails to match any of these paths here, boom, 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 and there's still something after the slash, capture everything after the slash and have it go to the same handler as slash, which is the home handler. And all that is it does nothing. It just renders the index page. So by adding back that one route, which is kind of a catch-all route, we're now saying to Buffalo, hey, when requests come in, if someone sends a request for API/bands, I know how to handle it. Basically, if anything else comes through, send it to the home handler and let the home handler do it. And all it's doing is rendering my index.html page, which is basically the root of the Vue app. That's it. It wasn't that difficult to set up. It's not very magical. When I generated the application, I generated it as a standard Buffalo app. I didn't use the API option. And I didn't use the API option because I wanted Webpack. I wanted all that. I wanted to be able to render at least this template and hopefully, maybe a layout around it. So the API option is actually a terrible option when you're doing this sort of application. You want to render a normal Buffalo application. The other piece of the pie is when you go to generate, say, a resource for your application. So here, if I say Buffalo G resource, here is actually the command I use to generate, say, the member resource. Notice I'm adding the flag --type equals JSON. When I do that, what's going to happen is it's going to generate JSON-based resources as opposed to HTML-based resources. So let's look at the bands here. So this was created the same way with the JSON API, and you can see that it's returning JSON, right? It's returning JSON, so on and so forth. And we also, if we look in our templates folder, there are no templates for band or for members. So when you do the JSON flag, it's really nice. It creates these nice JSON endpoints for you. And it doesn't deal with any of the template stuff, and your resources are already kind of set up to work nicely with JSON. So that was really all we needed to do to get Vue working with Buffalo. It was 4 plugins, all starting with the word Vue. It was a couple tweaks to the Webpack, particularly this resolve alias here. And this isn't even necessary, to be perfectly honest. I did it because it's cleaner looking. It's nicer, right? It's nicer to have this shoved in here than inside your JavaScript that you're going to see all the time, right? And then I added, again, this Vue loader configuration. So that was all there was on the JavaScript side. On the Go side, it was simply adding this catch-all address here that captures everything. What's also really nice too, is everything is going to be stored, that whole URL is going to be stored in the parameter path, which is kind of nice here. So if I go back to, let's go back to the home handler here, cap locks key, and Vim kills you every time. If I go back to my home handler here, I can do C, param, and then what I say was called path, right? There we go, and I'm just gonna get rid of that. So back here, here's our app. If I refresh, you can see here is the parameter. So I can even capture that in my controller as a parameter, the name, the full path, if I wanted to do something strange or funky in there. I can do that. But that's it. There's really honestly nothing else to cover. I just wanted to show this to you, get it out there. It's not that difficult. It's actually quite a lot of fun to use these front-end frameworks with Buffalo. They work very, very nicely together. So that is it for now. Again, go to github.com/gobuffalo/Vue recipe to see this. And that's it for now, and I hope this helps. This video was brought to you by Gopher Guides. If you're an organization, conference, or user group that is looking for Go training, please visit gopherguides.com. All training is custom designed to match your educational needs.